Sorry about that, guys. I guess Zoom didn't want to let me into this meeting, my meeting. So I'll give everybody a chance to get logged in and everything. Thank you for being patient. I totally appreciate it.
I made it.
It was me. Like Zoom wouldn't let me into my meeting. It was weird.
It's okay.
Thank y'all for waiting.
And I was just sitting here mad that I didn't invest in Zoom pre-pandemic because pandemic, Zoom was like $80 a share, and I was like $300 a share or something like
Oh
that.
yeah.
Crazy.
You know what's crazy? I hadn't even
Yeah.
heard of it until like pandemic, so I didn't even. I guess I
Yeah.
didn't really need it.
Zoom was 3 months ago.
Dang. I've only used Zoom and WebEx.
Okay, I'm not even being honest right now. Hold on. It was. Hold on. Let me get in this stock. It was 179 or 163 pre-pandemic. Oh no, that was only in May. Let me go more back.
That's still pretty crazy, though.
No, on March 6th, Zoom was 114. Now Zoom is 282. It has doubled since the pandemic.
I mean, it's really the main platform that everybody's using, and it's the most accessible across the platforms. Like I've used Microsoft Teams, which
I
is all
love
right.
Teams.
Yeah, but I've noticed that a lot of people have more access getting into it if they don't have some type of. You can get on it without a Microsoft handle. I don't know.
Oh yeah.
I've used
We don't.
WebEx, which isn't. I didn't think it was that great, but
Zoom is the best, hands down. It is. No, it's really the best. I like Microsoft Teams just because my job uses it.
mm-hmm.
So it's
Yeah,
fine
Zoom is
for that.
straight. But yeah, as everybody starts coming in, of course, feel free to drop your name, where you're from, and what you do in the chat. And you don't have to put your email if you've been here before. It's probably on the email list, but you can if you want to, just to share with other people. So I was late, so I apologize. Me and Zoom were, I guess we were just having differences at the beginning. But thank you guys for being here again. My name is D, if you don't already know. Black Spaces, Placemaker, all the things. um, so I did want to like just kind of get everybody on a call today, just because of the 7 objectives that just came out. Shout out to Byron, Gigi, Jermaine, Drew, Fabiola. There's somebody else on there that I don't know like personally through social media, but shout out to you and I guess myself as well. From what I've heard and seen from APA, at least the people that I know and connected with, it is getting some attention. It's being circulated a lot. It's being seen by some people, talked about by some people. So hopefully it'll get in the right hands. Um, Before we really jump into that, I want to pass it off to Byron and kind of let him talk about it and kind of if he's thought about next steps or what's the next step for as far as us and the people that want to be involved and all of the things.
Yeah, sure. Thanks again, D, again for allowing to use your platform to kind of catalyze the conversation behind this whole 7 objectives. I think it was pretty successful in the sense that we were able to have so many people be involved in it and provide feedback to get it to the level of what it is and to get it to so many people's attention. And yeah, like, we've got the interests of APA, as you've mentioned, and perhaps at a later time you can go in detail with that. But when it comes to other organizations, I've attended the Design as Protest Collaborative, and they too, if some people aren't familiar with them, they are pretty much designers, architects, urban designers. They have provided I want to say a list of demands in regards to the whole social justice and the whole protest what had occurred earlier this year with George Floyd, and they too have gotten like a lot of attention in regards to their document, and we were able to have our document, the 7 objectives, listed as a resource guide on their platform, which is great. I can send a link to everyone via this chat, perhaps. In addition, they're also looking for urban planners who are interested, uh, particularly BIPOC, if you identified as Black, Indigenous, people of color. They would love for us to join on their planning and policy team. So as we've, Dee and I have talked, and some of the planners as well, I'm not sure if who else is on the call that, we've conversed with, but, we think it's a great opportunity for us to kind of collaborate with them to leverage our goals when it comes to these objectives. I've also had many other planners just reach out to me. I've had Dr. Reagan Patterson from University of Michigan. She seemed very interested in collaborating with us in regards to one particular objective, which was the actively seek and engage between Black academics and Black planning practitioners. So perhaps we can see how we can establish some type of pipeline there. I also want to give a shout out to, let's see, so to Sean Robin. I've attended Sean's collaborative Zoom meeting as well, which is focused primarily on Black and Indigenous communities of color, and it was definitely a great discussion that was had. And I do look forward to attending more meetings with Sean and his team. And perhaps, again, we can do some collaborative stuff in regards to our 7 objectives and with that collaborative. And I think for right now, I think that's pretty much all I got. So again, if anyone is interested, just, you can always contact me, Dee, and anyone else who was on that list. We're definitely looking forward to motivate people and work forward to implement some of these objectives.
Definitely. Appreciate it. And Sean, my apologies for missing your call. I got all my times and dates thrown off, but I heard it was really awesome. Do you guys plan on doing another one, or what's kind of like the timeline?
Yeah, we're looking to do one in October. We don't have a date yet.
Okay. Yeah, just keep me updated, and I'll definitely be at this one. So like Byron mentioned, with the design, I don't want to butcher the name. It's Design as a Protest, or was the...
Yeah, design as protests.
Right? Okay. So with that, NOMA actually, I think Mark is on here. Shout out to Mark. He connected me to the NOMA chapter in DC, and someone from there, Gina, I can't remember her last name. I want to say Rodriguez, but that may not be right. She was very open as far as like where NOMA is going and where they're headed, and kind of some of the things they've done to create themselves as a separate entity of APA. Not so much talking about that this time, unless I really want to get into it, but more so just, we talked about kind of breaking down the silos of planning, architecture, and design, in the sense of, like Byron was saying, design. Some of us do wear dual hats, like myself. I wear the planner hat, as well as now I'm trying to transition into the designer hat. But we've always been, at least Gina Fernandez, thank you. We've always been like kind of told to silo architects, like they do their thing, we do our thing, and there's no mesh, and that's why we end up getting some of the things that we get that aren't as good as they could be. So I definitely think this is a really great time and opportunity to, if you can, be a part of whether it's Designers Protest. We even talked with Gina as far as posting. I mean, I would personally, whenever they have something from NOMA, even if it's the DC chapter or NOMA, like the national chapter, just some of the events that they have, like they're having a conference. You can attend it even if you're not, as part of NOMA, even if you're not an architect, landscape architect, anything like that. So I definitely think that's a good opportunity for, I guess, for us to see like the other side, in the sense of most of us, or many of us, may just see like the site plan side, the technical side, or even the nonprofit side, but we don't really see the design and the architect side. And having like the best of both worlds is, I think, a pretty solid foundation, especially moving forward with the 7 objectives, in the sense of, me personally, like prioritizing healthy cities. We can only do so much on our end as a planner, so we still need that input from public health, safety, all of those things. So I definitely think moving forward as a collaborative with some type of design entity would be extremely beneficial, not only for us and each person in here individually, if that's your jam, but also as we move forward and whatever APA decides to do, moving on kind of thing. So again, thank you guys for the way you shared the 7 objectives, for helping them come to light. Again, I got to give a huge shout out to Byron for even allowing me to be a part of that, and just to drop my 2 cents on it. Drew, are you here? Can you hear me? Maybe not yet. When she gets settled, Drew had approached me about, kind of talking about the connection between urban planning as well as real estate. Whether you're on the private, public, nonprofit, whatever, I think we've all had our interactions with either a realtor, a broker, in some form or another, in the sense of they sometimes act as an additional barrier. I think that, along with the 7 objectives, is kind of like the 7 objectives is definitely the foundation of tonight's call, but I think kind of what Drew was talking to me about ties back into that, in the sense of, okay, how can we keep adding things to our arsenal to continue to push the narrative of not only the validity of planners, but the validity of Black planners that they wear multiple hats, which we all do in some form or another in our job. So beyond just transportation, beyond just, food security, we connect the dots in more ways than just one. So Drew, whenever you're ready, whenever you get together, you can definitely have the floor to kind of talk about the real estate side of it and like the connection between the two.
All right, I'm here. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
All right. Hi, everyone. This is Drew, Urban Planning Life. I know I don't usually show my face much. I'm still at work, so I can't talk that much, but I want to make it. But yeah, I'm currently getting my real estate license. And in the midst of that, I have realized that, real estate agents and the real estate field plays a key factor in what we do every day, as we see realtors come into our office all the time. There are customers, things like that. And then over time, we've seen things like redlining. We've seen like things where they play a big part of like either being detrimental to the urban planning field, or they can be an ally with us. And I feel like we need to, like Dee said, have more than just, it has to be more than just planners. We should have relationships with designers, engineers, historians, realtors. I think that this should be like the fabric should be, because at one point in time, we all play a big factor in being planners. I believe like everyone has a planner within them. Some of us are just educated in it. The real estate field does have like its place in urban planning, and specifically like when it comes to like understanding like mortgage loans and lenders and how that can be detrimental to our community, and educating our community on mortgage loans and lenders and the history of it, redlining, and what to look for and what to be specifically like looking out for, as far as like these are the things that you need to be cautious of when you do get a realtor, because some of them are just there to make their commission. And there are things such as like, we all hear the thing of like redlining, but there is something else called, what is it? It's like, I forget what it's called, but it's basically
Steering.
Are you talking about steering?
Steering.
Tell you, or people in the neighborhood, hey, there's a project coming down the street. It's multifamily. You know what happens when multifamily comes in? It's going to be crime in those people. And, they get people to sell their homes, and then they make a profit off of that. So I believe that we need to be more multifaceted with our group and just include, and that's why, I don't know if you guys seen my, when I posted the post for this meeting, I also said, hey, if you're an engineer, if you're a realtor, if you're an architect, if you're a designer, we welcome your input. Now, trust and believe this is a planning platform, but we do welcome your input because, like I said, we're all planners at the end of the day. We all contribute to the urban planning field. So, yep.
Thank you, Drew, for that. Thank you for like still, popping in even while you're at work. So I do want to get more in depth in that, but Tiara, go ahead and add on to that.
Hold
In
on.
any way.
I worked in real estate for like 2 years, and we basically bought foreclosures. So we were like participators in a lot of gentrification in Brooklyn. A lot of and I worked in mortgage foreclosure on the side of the banks. You got to work or you got to work and make your money. So I worked as a paralegal on mortgage foreclosure on the bank side for like 3 years prior to working in the real estate office. And I agree that the agents have a lot to say, but I think what's important, and no one mentioned it, is we really have to be connected to the policy people, because those are like, the real estate agents wouldn't have had anything to redline had it not been for our federal government creating policies to actually participate in redlining. And so far as like mortgages and loans and yeah, I just seen somebody say that's what I do now. I work in economic development now, and mainly like with small Black businesses and workforce development. But anyway, back to real estate. And like, I agree with everything Drew said. Yes, realtors are a big part of it, but a lot of them don't even know as much as we do about.
Boy,
I
deserve some of that commission.
They know about. They really don't. Like, I've worked with them. They don't.
Anything.
They don't. A lot of them don't know as much as we do about mortgages and foreclosures and how that impact. And additionally, like when you talk about rezonings, I would also like to throw in that we really need to be pushing for impact assessments in our neighborhoods. Like if I was a lawyer, I would have been sued the city of New York, because in our SECRA review, which is like the environmental impact review, there is the socioeconomic chapter is short. It's the only chapter that can be performed completely by a planner. And it's very short, and it does not really assess for displacement. Like it does, but it really doesn't. Like when you look at it, it really doesn't factor in displacement and rezoning decisions. And that's all I have on that topic for now.
So thank you. So the real estate thing is part of like a bigger picture. And as that goes into the 7 objectives of planning and moving forward, like Drew said, this has always been primarily planner, but of course, like Tiara mentioned, like Drew, some of us wear other hats. Like, I would never want to be a realtor ever. But the people that are doing it and know what they're doing and they're trying to be better, I applaud them. But even in my experience as a planner in a small city, most realtors just know commission. They don't know exactly what they're calling for. They don't even know what they're really asking for. So sometimes you got to kind of hold their hand through it. Tiara made an excellent point as far as policy. Like, if we didn't have ordinances that would push people out, then we wouldn't have realtors trying to get people back in or rezone or whatever the case may be. Sometimes those realtors are in the form of a surveyor or a consulting firm company or a consulting firm that do the rezonings. I can't tell you how many companies or how many firms exist like that, and then you ask them like, hey, what are you trying to go to? And it's like, oh, I don't know. The client just wants to rezone. So they don't really know. They just know they got the checks and they got to make something shake. They gotta produce something at some point or another. I mean, these are people that show up at the beginning to drop it off, and then maybe show up at the end of the council meeting if there's one required. So while we're talking about that, oh wait, hold on. Byron, Heritage Commission, Black neighborhoods to gain more autonomy and have more control of land use. Perfect. That kind of ties into what I wanted to talk about a little bit.
Yeah, I have forgot to add that, but you can go ahead. I'm sorry. And I'm
No,
sorry.
you're good. I'm glad you added that. So when I'm not doing placemaking, land use and like zoning for small businesses, especially Black and minority owned, is like one other thing that I kind of got dumped on when I was in my previous job. So I had to interact with these businesses a lot on a day-to-day basis as far as figuring out A, B, and C. I'm trying to get get COs, inspections, permits, all the things. So when we talk about land use is an additional barrier, probably just as restrictive as zoning, if sometimes not more. Because sometimes the zoning will allow for it, but the land use won't. There's sometimes, I think all of our cities, all of our states have some type of contradictory overlap. Being able to manipulate land use for the good now, it's like gentrification with a little g, how it can be beneficial in preserving Black neighborhoods and Black communities that typically get left out of the historic preservation conversations, or they're a part of them, but it gets to the point where they get priced out in the sense of they can't afford to stay there any longer. They can't afford to maintain their house or keep up with sometimes these just like over the top requirements that some of these historic preservations have. Um, so I definitely think land use is a tool in all of our cities in some form or another. As that's like a policy thing that keeps us from that's added onto us. Like, okay, we only have to do the bare minimum and not really giving them more than what they deserve, whether it's as business owners, as property owners, as renters, or whatever the case may be. That's been a pretty heavy barrier to entry, in my opinion, and from my perspective. Obviously, saying it from Texas. So I did want to talk about that with y'all. And Byron, I definitely, go into a little more detail about what y'all have kind of been talking about, if you don't mind, you or Drew.
Yeah, and perhaps Drew, you can add some stuff if I forget. And sorry guys, I literally just woke up, so I'm just all over the place. But I did forget to add that bullet point, what I've placed in the chat. Again, pretty much Drew and I, we're working on one of the initiatives where we're going to look more into the impacts of heritage commissions, right? I believe like 2 or 3 calls ago in regards to this collective, we talked a little about autonomy in our neighborhoods and how that look for Black folks. So the decisions that are being made usually are coming from top down, and Black businesses, Black residential homeowners, and even Black renters usually are left out of the decision-making process, whether it is the planning board, or any type of council meetings that affect land use and transportation policies. But we truly believe that, at least for me, I'm not, I don't want to put in any words in Drew's mind, but I believe that we do share this goal that we should have more autonomy in our neighborhoods, where we can have some type of commission set up that would take a look at as which was mentioned before as well. We can take a look at land use initiatives that may affect our neighborhood. So, for example, if a developer comes into Harlem, for example, which is was predominantly Black. I'm not sure what the statistics are right now. There should be a board that takes a look at affordable housing. Is that going to be is the amount of affordable housing units going to be is it going to be reflective of the neighborhood's needs, and all of this autonomy that we're talking about, of course, should be coming from the city. Like in my head, like I envision some type of charter with like the city of New York or the city of Houston, et cetera, throughout the United States, where these legislators, council men and women in our cities give some type of, again, autonomy to Black commissions or heritage commissions, in which we can like create our own leadership system that take a look at all of these policies, and it can go further into detail. Again, this is the very like beginning stage of it, but I think that's like the central focus of what we're looking at least when it comes to that one particular initiative, Advocate for Social Justice and Physical Neighborhood Changes. And again, Drew, feel free to add anything that that I perhaps may have missed.
Yes, absolutely. So I agree with everything you're saying, and I'm totally with everything you're saying. This is what I've been thinking about for years, that our community just does not have a say-so. And I love that you brought up the renter aspect of it, because we all know when we send out those public notifications, it goes to the owners, and typically the renters do not know what's going on in their community because the owners are not telling them, hey, I got this notification from the city, there's going to be a project being built right next to it. And guess what? It's industrial. They don't know what's going on. So I believe that this would be something to aid in helping our community and furthering the knowledge of what's going on in their communities, so that they'll be stakeholders. In addition to that, I, with the help of Tatiana, because me and Tatiana have been working on this since like last year, pretty much, I want to even take it further as far as I believe we should have our little municipal commissions that are set up, that are kind of like one-off from the planning team or planning departments. But I believe that this should be, and this is long-term, this is one of my long-term goals, we should have some sort of clearinghouse. So like a Black Heritage Commission clearinghouse, which is like the gatekeeper or the holder of all of the information from various different cities or communities that have like Black heritage, large, pretty much like a large scale of like history within it, like Leimert Park in Los Angeles. They're 79% African American, and they have a large history that I would hate to get lost because gentrification comes in or something like that. So I believe that there should be like some sort of clearinghouse where they hold the information, and then the developers funnel the information to them. Whenever they have a project, they have to send a vicinity map and probably a project narrative to them. And then wherever this project is, they will funnel that to the specific commission that is in that area. And then they get to chime in so that there's accountability. So this will happen through Congress and statutes. So it's like they can't get away from pretty much saying, oh, they never heard of, the developer can't say, well, we don't really think they should have say so. If it's a statute, then they have to do it by law. So that's a long-term goal, but for the short term, the little individual commissions, that's where we're gonna start.
Very cool. Thank y'all for sharing that. Man, that was really good. Whenever start talking about it more, get more in depth to it, definitely let me know. I really like the idea of, obviously preserving Black communities and add more to them, but also being able to put back into them in a way that I don't know if y'all saw, I posted it like a week or two ago about urban planning and the Black dollar, pretty much educating those businesses, because that education is business related, but it also kind of ties into the way people buy homes. They just kind of buy them, straight off pretty much off the auction. They don't really know what they're getting into, if it's an HOA, covenant deed, yada, yada, yada. The list goes on. So I definitely would like to be a part of that if, as y'all get more into it or however it fits. So that's really good. So for me personally, I know I had somebody reach out to me and ask kind of like, what was the next step for the 7 objectives, the Black Planner Collective? Like, is it membership based? At this point, like y'all know, it's just like, you show up, you chime in, you do what you do, and that's it. Like there's no real rhyme, there's no real structure to it. I'm not gonna say there's no rhyme or reason. But I know in our very first call ever, we talked a lot about APA and APA PPCD and kind of, what people liked about it and maybe what they didn't like about it. And I was fortunate enough, again, shout out to Mark for making that connection between PPCD's current president as far as some of the things that they're doing, how they're having a fight with APA internally as far as still proving the validity of PPCD. So I've said it before, and I'm going to keep saying it, that this is not in any way, shape, or form to push you away from joining PBCD, which is planning for the Black something division. I always forget the C.
Community division.
There we go. Y'all got it. The C. Right. Every time the C, man. But I still want people to look into it if they feel like that's something that's for them. Same thing with APA as a whole. That's for you. Certification, all of that. I definitely recommend y'all go check out GiGi's episode about if the certification is worth it, if you're considering it. Just for the sense of right now, APA is like big dog, like level 10 boss. And the 7 objectives is working away and whittling away at them. Like I shared with Byron and some of the other contributors to the document, somebody from APA that reached out to me for my article, her and some other people that are on the magazine, the Viewpoint magazine, have been trying to push on their editor-in-chief, pushes on one person up top, trying to push on another person. There's nothing set in stone, and just natural Black knowledge is to be skeptical about everything. But people are seeing it and people are recognizing it. It's just kind of like, okay, now what? We can't sit and wait on APA to push it out on Mitchell Silver and be like, okay, he's going to be the face. We can't wait to see. I mean, I'm not saying we can't wait. I mean, in the sense of now that the document is out, we're just gonna kind of sit idly by and hope that they bite and hope that they, that they're receptive of it, because there are things, if not everything on there, that they're gonna be like, yep, no, none of that is possible. And we've all seen it in different arenas, different realms, different collaboratives, that each one of those things is possible, even at a very grassroots, minimal level, like right now, just for the fact of you're not asking a whole lot out of APA beyond just like the support and the push behind it to really do what they say they're going to do in that subpar statement they sent out a couple months ago. So I definitely wanted to, shout out PBCD for what they do. And if you are in it or thinking about getting involved in it, I definitely think, continue to put into what they're doing. Just for me personally, I feel like there's more to be done, and PBCD is still trying to, it's kind of like still trying to find their identity, in the sense of they're still trying to prove that why they should even exist to APA. And if by this time, this is PBCD's 40th year being like who they are, there should no longer be a discussion of why we need to be here or why they should exist as a division, because it's just stupid. So I'm all about being able to help, contribute to that in any way possible. But I, like y'all know, APA is probably 95% white men at the top. The 5% is literally Mitchell Silver. But those things are going to change, and sometimes it may be disruptive, and sometimes it's actually, most of the time right now, it's probably going to be extremely uncomfortable, because a lot of non-BIPOC planners don't see an issue. Like, they see the issue, but they don't really want to put and act any changes in their cities and their firms, even in the way they do things on the private side. So I think now it's just the time with the 7 objectives, with APA, whether they're on board or not, they're either going to get with it or kind of like get lost, I guess. Yeah, Tiara, go for it.
I think one of the things about where I'm hesitant in is I always describe myself as a racial equity focused urban planner, but heavy on the equity. And I think a lot of planners is heavy on the classism. And that's why we can never let the wait, D, your face. I think and this is encapsulating Black planners as well, right? Because if you're not and heavy on the ableism as well, because you see a lot of Black planners even like advocating when we talk about multi-mode transportation. They're like a bike lane, even Black planners. And I'm just like, no, not a Black bike lane. We have people in wheelchairs that are Black who need to get to where they're going, right? So I think that is another piece, is like I love everything that Black planners is doing, but we cannot escape the equity piece. Not just the people that look like us and have the same degrees as us. Even like when younger planners come to me and be like, how can I get into the field? I don't tell them to get master's degrees right away. I tell them to go and try and find a fellowship first, and then see if you like the field enough to invest that type of time and money. I think just like the conversation around planning could stand to be a little different, especially since now we're in this place of like, we're Black planners, we're meeting as a collective. I think it's time to like talk about some other things outside of the traditional conversation, and other things is really like equity focused. Because when you are, I'm a Black woman, but when I'm in the room, and if I'm in the room with another Black woman and she's in a wheelchair, she becomes the most marginalized person in the room.
For sure.
And I think it's really important for us to stay focused on that as Black planners, because the last thing we want to do is be the white planners of Black people.
Thanks. That's a really good point, actually. I'm glad you brought that up.
I'm done talking again.
So I was on a podcast like a couple weeks ago, and I think the episode came out today, with Tamika Butler, which I'm sure a lot of people know. If you're into transportation, then like you know that name like Jesus probably, as well as Ebony Dumas, who I saw Miss Sharonda had mentioned for Designers Protest, and Kristen Jeffers. Like those are like stands to me, to be on a call with other people at one time, as well as Les Henderson. And Tamika talked a lot about. If you listen to the episode, she mentioned like about we internally judge people on who's woke enough, like who's Black enough, who's the wokest planner out there. And when Tiara said what she said about like, classism, we do that. Whether it's the school that we went to, the programs that we got, HBCU or PWI, we are subconsciously putting up extra barriers like they don't already exist for Black planners or Black social advocates or Black people in general trying to fight for the same end goal. Ultimately, using myself as an example, myself and Byron, I'm all about equitable spaces and places and all about putting back into the Black power, Black dollar, Black business. And he may be about Black transportation, multimodal, having accessible lanes and communities of color. At the end of the day, our end goal is still the same as far as we're trying to enhance the people that look like us in this profession because we deserve to be here. And like the decision that we make ultimately impact communities that look like us, but also in the sense of, well, Byron's in New Jersey and they do it this kind of way. We do it this kind of way in Texas. So he's more valid than me because, it's harder to plan in a big city than it is in a city that is, heavily car centric. And I say that to say, when a new planner reaches out to me, because I was that student at one point too. It's for me being human. Do you mind getting yelled at? And that's not even the hard part. The hard part is being that planner that is on a project that 100% is not beneficial to the community that you're serving. You are literally the opposite of a public servant. You are doing everything but serving the public. It's more so just like she mentioned, when there's somebody in a wheelchair, when there's somebody who has a disability, whether it's blind or they're deaf, they instantly become the most marginalized person in the room beyond. Like, it's them and then it's me, because there's no comparison. Whether they're Black or they're white, they may not care about me, but they're still a marginalized demographic that doesn't have nearly enough accessible resources as they should just in public spaces, day-to-day spaces. So I definitely agree to some extent of that may be the biggest challenge as far as there are Black planners out there right now too who feel like there's nothing wrong, work like a dog for 10 years and then you'll get your shine. And that's just not how it's supposed to be all the time. Like, if you're doing what you need to do, you're making statements, you're being bold, you're being ambitious, you're being passionate, and also a professional, then you deserve to move up at the same level as anybody else. 10 years, 15 years, 12 years in the game. I think we gotta break down. It's gonna have to be us to break down the silo between us versus us before white planners will take us serious, and white people as far as, okay, they actually came together as a collaborative and now it makes sense. Instead of, we can, divide and conquer, but we also got to make sure that we come back home and, put it all together and not just keep our resources kind of separated out kind of thing. And that's where I see a lot of disconnect. We talked about this on our first or second call, that everybody that's Black isn't down for the cause. And it hurt my feelings when I first had my experience with it, but it is what it is. You can't make everybody want to fight the good fight, whether they're planner or social advocate, because some Black people really do just want it for them, and they want to be siloed away from everybody else. And that's okay. That's totally their right. But as far as a Black planner or a planner of color that's coming into the profession with that mindset is literally adding insult to injury. Like, we already got about 100 plus white planners that are doing that. We don't need to put up the barrier for other planners, for other Black people, kids, the young adults, but that are thinking about coming into this profession. And I agree, telling them to deal with fellowship, even telling them to just volunteer for free. Because if you're gonna give up your time for free, that's gonna really, it's gonna be the test of fate if you're gonna want to do this for money. Because that's gonna be the whole game plan. That's gonna be the difference maker, honestly. So I'm glad you brought that up. I'm glad you mentioned it, just for the fact of, in order for this collective, any other collectives that y'all may be a part of, to grow, in order for us to be really taken serious and be seen individually as a group or whatever, it's going to be super important that resources aren't being hogged, like the pipeline isn't being clogged up to be like, okay, well, like Mitchell said, we're going to sit him on a pedestal and we're not going to do anything else with him. Like, yeah, he's there and somehow he's made it, but I mean, APA kind of uses him as a token to get more people in that look like us, which is cool, but okay, what do they let him, what is he allowed to do? What can he do? What is really like, well, how far can his stretch really go? So I definitely think being able to, if we're going to be a light, be 100% involved. Don't come half stepping with it. If a planner reaches out to you, Black, international, white, primarily Black or international, let them know, like, it's challenging getting into this. It's heartbreaking sometimes. It's frustrating. It's going to take you to some of the most toxic, emotional roller coasters you've ever been on, just because you get involved in things that you never would have thought were really happening. Like, you'll see politics at its worst, and it is like what it's really about, who it really benefits, and it's gonna break your heart in some cases, in some instances. But at the end of the day, like Drew talked about, this is open to everybody. Any Black professional that's in the development arena, whether they be planner, architect, engineer, because they're in a silo of themselves too. For us, we have to collaborate with other people to get stuff done. We cannot continue to be siloed and still be successful and still have successful projects and, really make the impact that we need to do if we're going to continue to just be like planners only kind of thing. So thank you, Tiara, for bringing that up. It's super important. And I think that's going to be the key to like really pushing the 7 objectives forward, as well as this collective and however it transcends, and even just existing in other spaces like NOMA, like Designers Protest. The collaboration has to be there.
Right, and that's how we pretty much like got the attention of APA, right? Like as opposed to just Black and Urban or Black Spaces separately, like making or creating a document saying this is what we want, coming together collectively, and just not even having APA in the picture, which I'm very happy that I remember, again, like conversations previously in like previous calls, someone mentioned, why should APA be the focus, And at that time, like the document was it was oriented towards APA. And I had to do a lot of thinking, like, I think whoever said that comment really made a great point where we shouldn't be looking at other entities to kind of resolve our problems, right?
Exactly.
And I think, yeah, like Dee, you made a good point when it comes to Mitchell Silver, perhaps, being an APA as a great role model for us. But I think it is important to kind of differentiate the performative measures from impactful measures that some of these organizations are creating, and like, how is that affecting us? Although, yeah, it's great to have representation, but yeah, it's kind of like the whole Black Lives Matter mural all throughout like Black neighborhoods throughout the US, right? What other social justice like laws or resolutions are being passed to really impact our lives? So.
Yeah, definitely. And it all comes down to, it looks good, but what's next? Like, what's up? What's the real intent? The murals were cool. They were great. All about public art. But did you change anything on your city side? Did you change anything with your policy? And that, I mean, you got to add nobody Black on your team right now. But like, did you actively do something that's gonna really impact the community beyond when this mural washes away, or y'all paint it over for the next big thing, next big trendy thing? And like, you couldn't have said it any better about Mitchell Silver. Like, I talk a lot about representation because it does matter, but that's literally like the tip of the iceberg. Like, getting here is one thing. And I come from a sports background, so everything is like sports tied into me. But like, my dad was my coach up until I was like 13. So he was always like, yeah, you made it, but now what? It was like, hey, can I take a break to relax? But it was always about, okay, what's next? You got to keep getting better. You got to keep working. Like, Mitchell Silver is a good representation, but okay, now what? What else is there? What else? Like, you can't give us Mitchell Silver and then nothing else. Like, you need more. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, Tiara, go ahead.
Additionally, I would say with the representation or even hiring a Black planner, another thing I discussed with young Black women that consult me about going to planning school is that, like, I went to Hunter. I started at UB with Byron. Hi, Byron. I started at UB with Byron. I ended up not finishing there, leaving, not going back to planning school until 2016. And when I went to Hunter, even though it's a social justice school, all the faculty was predominantly white, predominantly male, and I didn't show up as a person until we start in the history and theory of planning into a racial 1919 covenant. And I'm like, how are we not talking about W.E.B. Du Bois, the Philadelphia Negro study? How are we not talking about the Chicago plan? How are we not talking about the study in Chicago? Like, how am I just now coming up? And then when we do a lot of lip service to community activism. And I'm like, why are we learning about Jane Jacobs and we're not learning about Dorothy Mae Richardson? I was talking about, and I wrote this in my review at Hunter, like at the end of the class, like, why am I just showing up as a person? And then, like, I was in a policy class and this woman asked us, like, what would you do in this time if you would have been alive? I said, ma'am, if I was alive, I would have been a slave. So I wouldn't have been able to do anything. So like,
I had no rights.
Yeah, I had no rights, ma'am. So what hypothetical question are you really asking me? So that's another thing. I'm very honest. It's like, when you go to planning school, if you're not going to a HBCU, chances are a lot of the content is going to be very white centered. The community activism. I was at a social justice school in New York City, which I think going to school in New York City was the best thing I ever did. However, there was still a lot of prioritizing of like Jane Jacobs and like, not telling the full truth about Robert Moses. And like, even when we didn't like, why we didn't study Weeksville in planning school in New York City, just like all of the things. And I just always tell young women, like, just be prepared to not be a person in that class. Like you could say whatever you want, and I could give you a bunch of syllabuses that I have, like from a I was doing my own outside reading and contributing to class in that way, or we were talking about a subject, I would go and find how a Black person contributed to bring it up during that lesson. But like, I shouldn't have had to do that because the professor should have been incorporating us into the curriculum, right?
Exactly.
So like, I'm always big on that. So the thing about representation is, don't even hire me if you're not going to value me. When I was looking to go work at private planning firms, I was like literally pulling up planning firms and everyone would be white. And I'm just like, I feel the microaggressions from the computer screen. I don't even want to go and work there.
Yeah.
Like, but yeah, so that's another thing about representation. Make sure like representation is definitely not enough. And if you are hiring me, understand that I'm coming to shake the room. I'm not coming to be there and be disrespected by you.
Definitely.
And not valued.
And that's really where I think when we, Mark's not on the call anymore, but when we talked with the president of PBCD right now, she was talking about how, they're still trying to go back and forth with APA, and they got this going on, they got that going on, and, kind of giving like some advice. And, I respected it, you know what I'm saying? I guess I come from a millennial mentality. I don't even call it that. It's just like, I 1,000% don't believe that I need to wait 5 to 10 years to shine. I don't need to wait 5 to 10 years to get my turn. I don't need to wait 5 to 10 years to be seen as a Black planner or a Black female or a Black individual, especially in this profession. From the 7 objectives to just what we've been seeing in the last 5 months or so, they had to see it coming. They just didn't want it to happen. So now it's like, and I've been telling my brother this too, who, turning 20, trying to find his place in the world. If there's no seat for you at the table, it's okay. Make your own. Whittle your own table no matter how long it takes. That way, every little thing is going to be the way that it's going to suit you. So going back to representation and how it, it matters. It's a good start. It's literally one domino out of like 100 that need to tip over. You have to be seen. Like Tiara mentioned, seen and valued. Whether that's in pay, that's in day-to-day conversation. Microaggressions are not value. Microaggressions are microaggressions, and don't ever get them confused between the two. And you shouldn't have to code switch. Yeah, you're not going to say certain things at the office around certain people, but you also should feel like your coworker's not going to come at you and just ask you only about basketball games. Like, that's the only thing that I know how to watch on TV. Like, I only know how to talk about basketball games. Or I only watch Blackish. Like, maybe I watch Grays too. Like, you don't know. And those are microaggressions that, like, that's the whole premise of Black Space. And even these calls, like, you exist as is. There's no, you ain't got to put on nothing. You don't have to be any different voice. You don't have to code switch, because when you're white, you don't have to switch. You don't have to, turn yourself down. You don't have to be like, oh, you can talk about, talk yourself up through the whole conversation as far as, oh, I know so-and-so, I went to this school, this teacher, and all teachers are people that, oh yeah, I know of so-and-so, and yada, 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 yada. We can do the same thing. Like, I can talk about a teacher nobody knows about, but I feel good because that was part of my program. Like Tiara mentioned, so many schools, and I can't speak for HBCUs, only PWIs, because that's where, my degree is from. They only told us half the story. Robert Moses, Jane Jacobs. I'm not saying Jane Jacobs wasn't like, we give her a lot of credit for being the premier non-planner, but Dorothy Mae Richardson, Fannie Lou Hamer, like, she wasn't a planner, but she was already making moves, making things happen in the South. So it's things that she's right 1,000%. We shouldn't have to be self-teaching ourselves about a community that, as a whole, this profession, as broad as it is supposed to be for to be a public servant to all, not just to certain communities and certain people. Like, the people that we highlight is a clear reflection of the people that we care about. When you think about it, our whole test is about predominantly male, white male. They're not even planners. Most of them are architects. Robert Moses is an architect. Frederick Law Olmsted is an architect. Daniel Burnham was an architect. It's just like, that's a reflection of who this profession was supposed to be for, who was supposed to be able to have access to the AICP and APA. So going back to what Byron said, yes, that first call about APA and disconnecting, it threw me too for a loop. I was like, damn. You know what I'm saying? Like APA is what we're taught, what we're told, what we're kind of like force fed as far as that's how you're gonna ever make any noise or be seen by anybody. Is when you're on APA, then you've made it. But now I'm seeing that it's cool when APA is on your, they're there, they recognize you, but also like, okay, we exist without y'all. We gonna make something happen regardless. And I think to me, I think that's where we are right now as a collective, and then even as individuals, like even though we all got different things going on and we're different parts of the world, we're in a place now that we don't have the full upper hand, but we have it enough in the sense of jobs are either scared as hell to fire you, they want to have you to check a box, and they want to hear what you have to say because now it's like, okay, wow, those communities really do matter. I mean, we only sent out 12 notices out of 38, potential 38, but okay, they do matter. How can we get in touch with them? They want to have our knowledge now and our experiences to be able to get those people to come out because, of course, whether it's for city council, even right now for the national, the national election, even your small local development, they want those people to come out and support because they want to be able to do what they want to do to reap the capitalist benefits. So definitely thank you, Byron, for mentioning that, as well as thank you, Tierra, for putting that out there. I also wanted to, first of all, congratulations, Fabiola. I saw that you got a new job. Shout out to you. Congratulations.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I had someone reach out to me about Black Space, no.org, and they're like a nonprofit that they do like design work. Basically, they had an article on, I think it's Fast Company, and he reached out to me. It's kind of like, what's the difference between this and them? And it made me think for a second because I obviously knew Black Space before I started Black Spaces, and I saw what their mission was, and I saw what they were doing, and I 100% am like game for it. I love what they do. It was more inspiration as to what I wanted to do, but I feel like this is more so to be seen. It's the next step of representation. Like, no, we're not a quote unquote group that has memberships or anything like that, but I feel like whenever you come to this call, you feel like you can talk, you can be heard, and not be like, okay, it's crickets in the room because nobody can relate to you or you can't relate to anybody else. And that was something that I thought with Black Space being so, I mean, it's growing pretty crazy now, especially with some of the work they're doing in Tulsa. I didn't want anybody to feel like, there's no beef, there's no anything like that. Like the vision is the same, to enhance planning, urban design, urban planning in Black communities, of course. But for me, it's more so to be able to bring people together, for y'all to be seen. Because again, when I was coming out of school, hell, my first year as a planner, I didn't see anybody that looked like me. I didn't even think, I thought I was gonna have to move at least 2 steps over to be able to see somebody that was like me, or move to an all-Black city that was gonna possibly be representative of who I was or what I thought I wanted to do. So I just wanted to throw that out there as like if you see Black Space, we're different, but the same, there's overlap. There's overlap in all of our work, whether it's from transportation to housing to, whatever. But yeah, somebody reached out to me and it made me think like, it's a good question. Hadn't thought about it. But yeah, if y'all had anything else you wanted to talk about, anything else that maybe you may have seen with APA Design as a Protest, NOMA, it's a lot going on every day. So I have a hard time keeping up sometimes with what's going on and what's not. Oh, and shout out to Gigi for the Standards and Procedures for Black Planners, the report. That's on her website. Go check it out. It's really good. And Kendra, I think she helped write it or wrote it. Shout out to both of them.
Wanted to jump in real quick. I'm not from the planning background. I'm from a filmmaking background. I've been working in film here in Atlanta for the past 13 years or so.
Cool.
But I've been trying to step out and to create my own films, and I figured the best way was to make films about things that I know or things that I'm passionate about. And I'm passionate about my city. So I had this whole experience of listening to a podcast about historic buildings, not especially Black historic buildings not being respected or being kept up. And I was like, wow, how can we change this? So I kind of started on the path of all right, there's this one building. Maybe if people knew about it, they care about it. So maybe I should start trying to create something about it. And it just kind of led me into having a lot more interest about urban planning in general. And I started to sort of come to this realization that urban planning, the reason that people don't care is because people don't know. At least that's what I'm assuming, you know, like
Pretty much.
if you knew the significance of this building, it has a lot more standing before it gets torn down, before, you know, someone decides to redesign. If you knew the history of this area, and I feel like urban planning, especially Black urban planning, we should try to tell that story. Like, stories really ground people, and they're like neighborhoods that some of us didn't even know about their historical significance. And I think promoting that historical significance can really sell all the work that we're doing, from the transportation to the affordable housing to all of it. Like, if I feel like if we saw it visually, you know, with all the media that we're consuming, if we're able to create, you know, what we wanted to see and share that, you know, whether it's a narrative in a Hollywood style, or even just a PSA to educate folks about, like, hey, this is what zoning is. This is why it matters. You know, this is why it matters in your neighborhood. Don't sell grandma's house, you know, things of that nature. So I jumped on this call just to kind of, like, I'm trying to meld two interests in my life, like filmmaking and urban planning. I'm like trying to find this middle ground, and like, how can I get the message to people who need it? And there are two audiences that I'm not struggling with, but identifying and really trying to. And I feel like, you know, obviously a Black audience would appreciate, you know, Black stories about Black historical things. That's, you know, obviously gaining traction as we see more movies and shows like that. But also, like, what does the white audience need to know about our spaces, you know, before they move into Brooklyn? Like, this is what Brooklyn was. Before they moved to Atlanta, like, this is what Atlanta was. Like, we can't just start renaming neighborhoods, you know, and we need to, like, honor the people that came out of those neighborhoods in that way. So I just want to jump in here and share that, and hopefully gain more knowledge, and, you know, be able to connect with people who are doing that, because I want to incorporate those ideas of planning in an entertaining way that, you know, educates, entertains, you know, lots of people. But obviously I need to focus on one audience, and I think the audience would be a sort of gentrifiers. Like, all right, so this is what you need to know about this area when you're coming into it, and how to respect its significance, its historical significance to this community. Because I feel like if they knew, it'd be less, you know, sort of, oh, I didn't know, or, you know, pushing forward. Like, I think it's harder to push against something that's being promoted. And I think our cities would jump onto an idea of, like, telling those stories, promoting the cities or neighborhoods story, you know, to save those buildings, you know, those streets, say their names, their identity. And then pretty much that's what it comes down to, is like holding on to our identity that can get washed away in gentrification, you know, over, like, not even over a long period of time, like a short period of time, like 5 years or something. Like, you can come back to an area and it's completely, this identity's changed, and there's a marker on the ground. But it's like, well, how do you tell that story? Like, we can do historical tours and those sorts of things, but, like, we should really, you know, maybe there should be a, you know, or maybe I can lead something that does it visually.
The creator, you're the film creator. That's really awesome, actually. Thank you for joining. That's probably the most non-planning related person we've ever had. So I'm glad that you're here. I hope you're, you know, getting something out of it, and it's not boring you to death. So thank you for that. Fabiola, go for it.
Yeah, I just wanted to say to Cedric, I think what you're doing is that how you say your name, Cedric? Yes, is that right?
Yeah, that's right. That's me, Cedric. Okay. Like the entertainer.
Yeah, I think, like, that visual piece is absolutely crucial. It's so crucial. And you know, I created Beyond Urban Planning with the hope of, you know, teaching every, you know, people, the average person of color, everything that, you know, we're talking about, to really show them why it is so important. You need to understand zoning so you can understand why you shouldn't sell your grandmother's house. We sold my mother's house, and to this day, it is one of the biggest regret of our lives. But so I created that platform to educate folks. But what I ended up getting, the type of audience I'm getting, I mean, which I definitely appreciate, all my followers and, you know, folks, but these are white professionals who kind of want to get insight into a Black planner's mindset. And which, I totally appreciate all that, but I feel like the people that I'm trying to reach, they're not going to my blog. Like, I don't think it's, they're not there. And I think that, like, everything you're talking about, like, I think that would be, like, I'm not a creative person, but I can tell you for a fact, like, I envision somebody like you, Cedric, creating something where I would use to show folks, like, this is why you need to understand planning. This is why, it relates to your life. So, like, I mean, me personally, so I've already kind of understood that I'm not going to reach the people that I want to reach just by being on the internet. So I am going more on the ground. So I'm really involved in my community, like, with Charette High School, which I posted about. So trying to connect with, like, students, but also getting to their families,
Yeah.
and going to, like, neighborhood association meetings as a planner, talking to them. But ultimately, that visual is so important, and we need that visual. So I will support you, Cedric, in anything and everything that you do.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah, Tiara, have at it. Thank you for that, Fabiola. Thank you.
Thank you, Fabiola. Cedric, you have to, have you looked up Gordon Parks?
It sounds familiar.
Gordon Parks used to do that work. He used to not to educate the gentrifiers, but he used to take pictures and make small films about Black life.
Yeah, he took them in like black and, well, I think most of them are black and white, right?
Yeah.
He pretty much, he like documented, like, I think he was, can't remember if he was based in New York or not, but he pretty much took pictures of Black life, and he was like a planner, like who we consider like an advocate for the fact that he documented our lives outside of like the after effects of all the great urban renewal. This is what he was really doing.
Exactly. So look up Gordon Parks, and it's a young man in New Orleans. I'm trying to find the name now. And he has an exhibit in New Orleans, and it's all about Katrina, but it's really from like a Black person's point of view.
Mm-hmm.
It's amazing. Like, I'm gonna find the name and definitely get it to you, because that exhibit was amazing. And even Corey May Williams, she's not an urban planner. Gordon Parks is more of an urban planner, urbanist, was showing the everything Dee said about showing after the impact of urban renewal. Corey May Williams is also, a great photo artist, Black woman. Google, you can look her up too as well. I'm trying to think anybody. I can't think off the top of my head, but Gordon Parks, the young man in New Orleans. I think it's called the B exhibit. I'm gonna find it for you. I promise you I am.
Yes, when you do, send that to me.
I have one. I have a name. There's, Mindy Fullylove wrote this book called Root Shock. She's not a planner, but she's a doctor, a psychiatrist, African American from New Jersey, and she analyzed like urban renewal, how it impacted Black neighborhoods when you removed all of these landmarks in New York, Pittsburgh, and a southern city. She looked at 3 cities, and how did it impact the Black community when you took away monuments, houses, etc., for renewal. But I could see doing like a movie version of that, because she did the book version. I've heard her lecture. She's based at Columbia Presbyterian, but she's, I've heard her speak about her work. But having a movie of that would be even, not that the movie would have to follow what she researched, but that story's been happening over and over again. So it would be interesting, I think if a film would reach a different.
What's it called again?
Her book is called Root Shock, and her name is Mindy Fullylove.
Can you drop that in the chat when you get a chance, Sean?
Yeah.
Thank you. Sure. Yeah, and a book that's similar to that is called A Letter to Harlem. Dang, who wrote that? She wrote it. She's Black as well, and she basically did the same thing. She was a journalist that just decided to move to Harlem on a whim from Texas, and she got there, just doing a journalist thing, kind of freelance, and she ended up getting really involved in her neighborhood, which is predominantly Black, and they pretty much saw gentrification happen like at her back door. So she started going to like neighborhood meetings. She would like take notes from people that she met, and it was supposed to be interview style, but she ended up like becoming friendly with all these people, older ladies, people that watched out for her in her building. So she really documented it from a journalist perspective, but also as an urban planner. She talked a lot about Black, like Black people, celebrities in Harlem that, I mean, man, I hadn't even, like, you know, Langston Hughes, but some of the other people she mentioned were like pretty key players in Harlem at the time. And she pretty much wrote about, she saw gentrification happening in real time. Oh yeah, Harlem is, sorry, it's called, yeah, Harlem is Nowhere. That's what it's called. But yeah, that's really awesome as far as being able to document it, because like you said, right now is like in the digital age, everything is being digested so quickly through pictures, video, and what Fabiola said, like the people that are indulging in your content are the people that it's their fault. Like, you know, I mean, you want them, but you don't. Like, they're gonna read it, reach out to you, all the things, but they're not really gonna do anything. And that's where, to me, I feel like this is the perfect time for us as a collective, and then, you know, with other different things that we have going on individually, excuse me, is a good time, as you know, to really leverage our voices and our power, in the sense of, I may not know the community, but I know if it's all Black and I go in and I don't have on no badge or anything like that, I'm just going in being myself, I guarantee you I can get more out of it than going to it as like a city planner, or, you know, with my badge on or whatever from work. So, I mean, I guess the biggest thing right now is dehumanizing planning, you know, making it not only people friendly, but Black friendly for Black communities. Because without Black planners, you can't create sustainable, functional, equitable, you know, successful Black communities. And Byron, what you mentioned about the neighborhood plans is 1,000% true. Like, they literally either sit on a shelf for eons and don't go anywhere, or the developer picks and chooses which parts he actually wants to use or bring to fruition. And no matter what part it is, it always ends up being a displacement mechanism instead of a preservation mechanism. Kind of. Definitely a really good point that you brought up right there, Byron. So I guess I want to be respectful of y'all's time, especially me being the one that couldn't get into my own meeting. What do y'all feel like is the next step, whether for you individually, for us, for as the Black Planet Collective as a whole, the 7 objectives, and then for me in Black Spaces, as far as like, what do you want to see moving forward? How do you feel like we can keep the momentum going, and also keep our foot on the neck, kind of thing?
I mean, I think the 7 objectives is a good framework. And, you know, one of the questions I kept having today is like, who's the audience, who's pushing it forward? And I guess we're the ones to push it forward, right? So maybe one piece of this could always be, which of these objectives are landing somewhere and getting momentum? And are there things that people on this call are doing or could be doing to take one of those objectives and make it happen somewhere? You know what I mean? So, I mean, I'm a pragmatic person, so I'm always looking like, you write something down, you crystallize it. Now, how do you push it? You know, and so like, what does that look like? And already, even on this call, just hearing about the Black Heritage Commission, that's already one thing that's someone's got an idea, and maybe there's ways that others could help with that idea, for example. But, you know, so just that would be my thing.
Definitely. Thank you for that, Sean.
Yeah. Yeah, Dee, if you don't mind, I'll just say, I guess, a little sentence or two about it. Yeah, I think right now it's like growing organically, this 7 objectives document. And I think that's fine, right? And again, you know, as a collective, it's very hard to kind of have everyone on the same page, or to have everyone in work on the same interests, right? So at this time, I think at least what I'm doing is kind of seeing where we can have particular resources allocated toward each objective. So as I've mentioned before, again, like a urban planning professor at University of Michigan reached out to me about the Black academics and Black practitioners pipeline. So I'm gonna work with her just to see, like, you know, where her head is at, to see if we can incorporate some ideas in regards to that. But I think what is important, as Sean had mentioned, as a framework, perhaps it does need more structure, in the sense that what I will do, and again, you know, other folks are more than welcome to help me out with it, but I think I'll start creating some type of document where we have these objectives, and then we have like an implementation strategy for them, you know, and then we'll see. And again, the 7 objectives have a timeline. It's 10 years, so similar to like our master plan in a sense. So we can see like which one is more short term, medium term, and long term goals that we can accomplish. So yeah, I'll create this document pretty much again like outlining what I guess low level fruits that we may just have the opportunity to work towards implementation. And again, it's gonna be very flexible. Like we're gonna have APA probably, you know, join us or put in their 2 cents about it here and there. We're going to have, we perhaps may be working with the Designers Protest Collective. So it's going to be, you know, we're in a very flexible time. And I think that's also good, but I think it is also important to have structure on it. So I think going forward, as I mentioned before, creating this document will help out with that structure. And real quick, I just wanted to add, there was another police shooting today, and not today, excuse me, but at least it's on the news in Wisconsin. A young man, I'm not sure, oh, Jacob Blake, was shot about 7 times by police officers in front of his kids. So as we could see, you know, throughout the summer, we've had these performative gestures being made towards the Black community, but change to our police departments and our neighborhoods continue to be delayed. So again, this is important for us to have autonomy not only over our land uses, but our bodies as well. All right.
Thank you. That's a really good point. Because, like you mentioned, as a Black person existing in a Black body, land use and zoning pretty much tells us where our Black bodies can exist and where they feel safe, where they are safe, and where they're welcomed and where they're not. So when you can continue to see things like that and other things, Breonna Taylor, if you haven't, they had posted something. I don't know if you can still find it in Louisville. How pretty much the gentrification of downtown made that a lot more accessible than it should have been. Things like that, like Byron mentioned, we're talking about it. We're, you know, pro this, pro that, supporting Black businesses, but are we changing our built environment to really make things safer for us in the sense of just day-to-day life? And unfortunately, right now, it doesn't seem like that's the case. Nobody is really moving in the progressive way that they say they want to, or that they, you know, propose to. So ultimately, like he said, that, you know, as far as a master plan of a scope of how we're going to get from point A to point B, organically is probably the best thing. Just from based on what you said, that could probably fall underneath prioritizing healthy cities, because healthy cities, you know, feed into multimodal transportation, visibility in daytime, even at night, whether it's at home, out in public, sidewalk lighting, street lighting, things like that. So those are things that inadvertently tie into, you know, what we do in the built environment. And the more that we kind of sit and we twiddle our thumbs and we wait for people to understand defund the police, or we wait for the right developer to come along, you know, we can't, because I mean, honestly, like our lives are at stake if the more time that we waste and the more time that we kind of like twiddle our fingers and kind of like wait for some APA or whomever to come save us. Like, it's good to have the connections and it's good to have people in the inside, but as we're seeing, like it's going to have to be a grassroots collective, empowered collective of taking it serious, so they'll take us serious, kind of thing. Miss Watley, APA's Great Places designation. I thought maybe we could put something similar as Great Black Places neighborhoods. I like that idea. And we can provide some analysis, commentary on why these places are great, maybe using some of the 7 objectives or other. That's actually really cool. That was Christy. I know Christy personally. She mentioned about great places, like Great Black Places. I would actually love to kind of spearhead that. Places are kind of my jam, but I think
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
To cut you off, but I will love that because so I live in Providence, Rhode Island, and I've been hearing about all these rich Black people on Martha's Vineyard. I'm like, I want to know about this community. I want to know what's going on over there. But no, like, and then also like when I was in Omaha, Nebraska, there was a small neighborhood. It's like middle of nowhere, still within the city, but it's like in its own little world where it was like a lot of like upper class Black Americans. And I remember traveling to that neighborhood and it was just like a whole new world to me. And I'm just like, wow. So I think having something like this would not only just energize me as a planner, but it's like it would show people that like there are great communities that are predominantly Black out here too. But I
Yeah,
think that's so awesome. Like, oh my God, I would love to help with that.
definitely. I think that's gonna be my like homework assignment for next couple of weeks, or next month or so, because I think there are great Black places everywhere. Every state has one, even if it's like a small unincorporated town. They live humbly, and I mean, they don't want to be anywhere else, no matter what they have or don't have. And I saw that Sean mentioned about power as elected officials. I can't get jiggy with the whole council thing right now, but anybody in here that is, or somebody, like, definitely we need that, because like we mentioned, policy is a big barrier. As much as we all may not be fans of it, that's what's keeping the same things, the same people. That's what keeps allowing the same like subpar, half-ass developers to come in and get the tax credits and build 12 affordable housing units out of the 20 that they're supposed to build. That, like, because there's people in council, there's people on commission boards that they just keep letting them slide through. So like Tierra mentioned, write more policies. I think writing a policy and presenting it to a city, whether as an individual or for your job or as a consultant, if like I know, most cities hate spending time on writing policies. They don't want to spend money, but they'll spend money on that because they don't want to do it. I think that's where a lot of our impact and influence can come from, for the people that are more on the policy side. But even just from going back to what Drew was talking about, real estate and land uses are things that are part of most of our development codes. So since those things are like law of the land, no pun intended, it's a barrier for us to really help people move forward, because once you tell people about the process of rezoning, they're like, oh no, I don't even want to get into it. I don't want to even get started, in the sense that it may take 2 years just to get on council, just to even get to that point. That doesn't even include like an approval or revisions or comments or anything like that. So the policy part, I think, honestly, that is what's gonna catch APA's attention the most, because they're so big on policy and advocacy, and they think that writing new policies for everything is the answer to every issue, every social justice issue. But I think now having policy and having an implementation plan attached to it, like this is how you can do it, and it doesn't take 10 years to do the policy and then do an implementation plan, is gonna be pretty big game changer. So yeah. Ms. Watley mentioned that most council members are focused on development and construction, not necessarily on legislation. They care more about, are they gonna be able to just leave their all their construction stuff on the site unattended, disregarding of whatever inconveniences that may come up for the people that live on that block or in that area, or whatever businesses. They don't care about that. The legislative part of it, they just care about, how long is it going to take? Is it going to be in the way of us? Is it going to inconvenience us as council members? And how soon can we start? How soon can we get out there and get that grand opening, that ribbon cutting picture?
One more thing.
Yeah.
I think another thing that a lot of Black planners don't get to participate in is being published in an academic journal. It's like we go through our master's program, and it's white people that I know that went through their master's program and walked out of there published. Whereas we get out of our master's program and we're not published in a peer-reviewed journal. Therefore, like, it's harder for us to get into even the adjunct space to become professors. And so I think another thing that we should focus on is making it more, the publishing process more transparent. So anybody that has been published and knows the process, any professors that we could talk to about that to get us more indoctrined on how do we become published. We all have great ideas, right? And I think that our ideas deserve to be in the classroom. And the only way they're going to be there is if we are being published in these different planning journals.
Definitely, I 1,000% agree. And that you didn't say anything wrong there. That there are some planning journals out there right now that were published, and you're like, how? Because like it's the same information, just copy and paste it almost. So what is it going to take? And that's something that I think um, I can try to tap in with Lindsay. She's a person that did my article, whatever, for Viewpoint, as far as wanting to, I was very vocal about having more Black planners present in the magazine. That's what's going to make people even care about reading it and contributing to it. Like, nobody wants to contribute to a magazine. They've never seen anybody that looks like them even have like a comment section. So I think that's a good way to start getting, like, kind of busting the door open to get more Black planners published, encouraging them to want to be published, because sometimes I feel like they tell you all that stuff in graduate school about how you get published, and they do that on purpose to make you like not want to do it because they make it seem so time consuming and so tedious. It's like, oh man, all of that, I ain't even gonna worry about it.
One more thing.
Yeah.
But I had this crazy idea back when I worked in mortgage foreclosure, and this goes under like the housing hamlet. It's just like, a bunch of older people, specifically like Black older people, lost their houses due to reverse mortgages. I don't know who's familiar, but that's like you get a mortgage and then you take it back to like you live off the equity until you die. But what happens is a lot of them don't die. So therefore, they end up broke and without their house. And I was like, when I was working in mortgage foreclosure, I said it would be so dope if we could take all of these 3 to 4 families in Brooklyn of these reverse mortgages houses and have them turned into co-ops, so younger Black folks could come and buy an affordable house, and this old lady could stay in one of her units, or 2 of her units, whatever. And then you can sell the other portions of the property so she could pay back the reverse mortgage, so she won't go into foreclosure, so her house will not be put on the auction block.
Very cool. That's really interesting.
Girl, I'm having so many ideas.
I mean, that's really good because like we all know, housing is. Yeah, let's reach out, email me and Byron, because there's a real quick before we get off in Houston. It's not technically like that, but I have to look up what the name of the organization is. It's a nonprofit, and they buy it's like a land trust in Houston. They buy all these lots and they lease them to people, and it gives people the opportunity to have home ownership, but they don't have to worry about the land. If anything that we know as planners, if you work in the public sector or even in like the land use or whatever, then most people have the hardest time keeping up with taxes. That's really what causes people to even get to the foreclosure on the auction. That's what really weighs them down, especially older people. They have the money, or they just forget, or taxes just keep rising and they're out of the loop what they are. So they get behind on the property taxes. This group in Houston, they buy the land, they kind of split them up, whatever, and they allow people to lease them to give the opportunity at, home ownership. Nice size houses, 3 bedrooms, and people are only paying for a mortgage. They're not having to worry about paying for taxes. So in that alone, they've been able to build these different developments, and almost have them 80% filled, just for the fact that people feel so much more comfortable knowing that they can split up their, whatever their monthly income is, and know that they have this chunk of set aside just for their mortgage, and not so much worried about all the technicalities of property taxes, because that's another thing that, especially for Black owners, older or even younger, they don't truly understand how property taxes work. So when it's time to pay them, or when they're going up, sometimes it's more than anticipated, and it's out of, they didn't necessarily budget for it. So they did like the land trust thing, bought the land, and now they're leasing it to people for like 30 years, in the sense of, by 30 years, you can buy the rights back from the land trust. So they've been taking some of, you've been paying for mortgage, paying on the lease, they're getting the money as part of the grant. So it's yours. Technically, you just don't have to worry about taking care of the land until you're ready. And if somebody decides to buy one next to you, they can't sell it, like, they can't like gouge the price. If everybody is 165, they can't try to sell theirs for 225, obviously forcing property taxes to go up, kind of thing. So that's kind of similar to what you were talking about here. But yeah, reach out to us. Let's talk about that more in detail, just kind of figuring out like who to connect to, how to look more into it, and kind of trying to pull stuff together to, at least put some type of document out there about it, especially with homeownership being, for a lot of people, it's becoming a pretty big priority. And if not homeownership, I'm going back to But Drew, owning property, whether you are doing, if you're renting out or whatever, property taxes also kind of tie into your expenses and, keeping updated month to month kind of thing. So yeah, if anybody doesn't have anything else, be sure if you haven't already.
Can I chime in real quick?
Yeah, go for it.
All right. So another thing, when it comes to like home ownership and real estate and things like that, a lot of people don't even think about this because they're they're used to the, the American dream, white picket fence, little 3-bedroom house, 2 kids, a dog, sort of thing. A lot of people always skip over, you can purchase multifamily. Like I just purchased a 4-plex this year. My interest rate was 3.1. My down payment was 3.5. I used FHA loan and I have tenants. They pretty much pay my mortgage, and they have a great place to stay. I've sent pictures in my, my stories of things like that, of the units. They're really great, things like that. But people don't realize that single family is not your only option. You can also become like an investor. You can have like a 4-plex, a triplex. They're going for the same rates as single family. So out here where I live in Arizona. So a 4-plex is going for the same rate as a 4-bedroom house. Mm-hmm.
That's crazy.
So, yeah. And it's pretty much out here, I don't know where, in different areas, but out here, for every unit, it's 100,000 per unit. So if it's a duplex, it's going to be 200,000. Triplex, 300,000. 4-plex, 400,000. So that's another option for people to use.
Yeah, definitely. I think we should try to collaboratively put together like a document just to, even put that information out there, because people are doing the investing thing and like trying to flip houses. But from a planner perspective, if you're like me, when people come to me and they're like, "Oh, I'm flipping a house," I'm instantly like, "Yeah, I hate you. Don't talk to me," because people don't know what they're flipping houses and they think it's just gonna be like easy peasy. And then a week later, they come back and they're just like complaining about every single thing that the city did. And I'm like, I don't like the city either, bro, but you definitely wasn't prepared for like the inspection cost, the permit cost. You just kind of jumped into it trying to make like a quick, a quick flip. So I definitely think that's something, a really good resource as far as if you're going to invest, do it right and know what you're getting yourself into. So many people are getting into it, don't know what they're getting themselves into, and end up now footing the bill of their house or their apartment, as well as trying to foot the bill of this investment home they invest, put money into, whether it's a single family or apartments or, a rental or duplex or whatever. So I definitely think that's really, really important information. But thank you guys again for coming out. I definitely appreciate it every single time. I was figuring maybe we'll take a break in September, come back in October, give everybody a chance to kind of decompress, de-stress. I don't know if, a lot of y'all, if y'all have, transitioned back to going to work, or if you're still doing the stay from home thing or remotely. But we'll definitely still keep in touch. I mean, I'll still be posting. You can still email me, DM me. But we'll probably pick back up the calls in October just to give everybody a little break and, spend some time away from the internet. I know that's hard to do when everything is literally on the internet. But all the things that we mentioned, definitely reach out, Sierra, about what you were talking about with the housing, with that, worker cooperative, and then Drew, you, me, and Byron can definitely talk about the objective that y'all are working on, and I'll reach out to you as well, Byron.
Cool.
And then of course with, kind of putting together like something for, providing knowledge, rental properties, and then kind of how to make that work for, make it work for you, But yeah, thank you guys again for coming. If you haven't already dropped your email address, if I don't have it already, drop it in the chat. I'll have this one, I promise, recorded and put on YouTube within the next couple of days. And yeah, thank y'all for coming. Oh yeah, that's awesome, Drew. You can send it to the whole list because it's attached on everything. Thank you again, Cedric, for coming through as being the only non-planner and taking it on pretty well. We definitely want to hear more about what you got going on too. So definitely, if you don't follow us already, definitely try to follow as many people in this group as you can. They're all amazing planners. They're all doing amazing things. So yeah, thank you guys for constantly showing up to these things and making me feel tight. I appreciate it for sure. I'll see y'all in October. Enjoy your time with yourself. Stay sane. Stay inspired. Wear the mask too. Do whatever the people are saying to do. See y'all later.